Hey, I'm here with Mark and Mel, and we're going to talk about a really interesting topic. I think it's a real important topic for all of us as youth leaders. We're going to talk about how do we deal with difficult and hurting students, right? And I think some of us are probably just naturally gifted at this, and some of us are like me, and we're really bad at this, okay? So I have a whole bunch of questions. Welcome to the coaching session. They're going to coach me on how to do this, and you're going to benefit from this. So first question is this. Is there a difference between a difficult and a hurting student? Are they one and the same? Are they radically different? How do you guys see that?
I think typically difficult is personality-based. In a lot of ways, it's just like the way that they act, the way they're doing. Now, there may be a source for why their personality is the way that they are. That may be a hurting situation, but typically difficult is personality based, whereas hurting is what has happened, something that has happened to them, and they're responding to some sort of trauma that's in their life. And so sometimes that is a behavior, sometimes it's a mindset, and so there's two different ways that you would attack. Both of them are problems in theory, and there's different ways you would address them. Difficult being personality-wise, hurting being something that's happened to you or something that you're going through.
Also, just to know that, I mean, in general, there are going to be like waves of difficultness in almost every teenager.
Sure.
Yeah.
So like
it's teenagers.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
Hormones,
so you've entered a ministry where you're going to have difficulty at one point or another, even with your best kids.
Yeah.
And usually it's because something is either happening to them or because the way they're responding to something, they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so as they're trying to figure it out, they're being difficult in the process of it, and you just happen to be there while it's happening.
Okay, so we got really two different groups here that sometimes intermingle with one another. Let's talk about the difficult kids first, right? The ones that, for whatever reason, personality, or they just choose to be difficult. What are some best practices for us as youth leaders, as volunteer youth pastors, for handling the difficult kid in a healthy way, right?
I would say my first point of advice would be you need to respond, not react. So what's the difference there? A response is measured. It's awareness that there are multiple factors involved, and it's thinking through the solution of how. Reacting is something has happened, and I am reacting to what has happened. And I have found for myself, more often than not, my reaction is not an appropriate response to a difficult situation. And so the response is more tempered, it's more thought through, it's more intentional. So my biggest idol issue is that that whole power thing.
Yes.
So like if I'm being disrespected, it's attacking my power idol, and I respond with putting someone in their place. A very dangerous thing to do when you're dealing with teenagers, and yet it's can often be our default move. These kids these days and their lack of respect for authority and things like that. But if I realize there's probably a reason why this outburst has happened or this difficult situation has happened, if I'm responding, I want to collect information. I want to find out what is happening and know how to respond to it so that we can bring about health to it. I'm not just reacting is stopping a situation, responding is bringing health and healing to a situation.
Good. Yeah, it's really good. Absolutely. Also, just knowing different personality matrices. I think, the trends now is what is your personality, what's your Enneagram, what's all that kind of stuff going on. And for you to be aware of why a kid would behave this way, to know what a personality might be, is very important. They might be a born leader. Well, guess what? All of a sudden, they're coming against a really strong leader or a weak leader, hopefully not, but someone who they could kind of all of a sudden challenge. Yeah. And so they're like, well, I can challenge this person, so I'm going to do it. And that's because they're a born leader and they're going to be a great leader one day. But all of a sudden, this not so great refined leader, like in the package of a 14-year-old, is all of a sudden talking to you, the new volunteer youth pastor, and you're just trying to figure it out. Yeah. And all of a sudden you have this going on a little bit. And so understanding that is important.
And they're trying to develop some of those
those
early gifts. You have a way to really shut them down. Or you have an opportunity to really pace with them and bring out of them the best qualities of those situations. If you're not aware of personally how to communicate to different personality types, that's important to know on your team too. Like if you're leading a team of people, understanding you're going to have difficult people on your team, difficult personalities. But so understanding how to communicate with them, how to explain things in a way that they can hear it and understand it and improve from it.
And making them aware. I think a lot of times our battles, we're just helping the kid in response to them, helping them become aware of how they're behaving with the other students. It just changes things, right? So if I had a student who was very curt with their words, or just very matter of fact, which I can tend to be myself, and so they're like, I hate this. You know, maybe later you might have a conversation, you're like, listen, when you say this makes this person feel like this. And helping them become socially. I feel like with teenagers, you're trying to help them fit in societally sometimes. And so you just want to have some of those honest conversations with them that might not have been the best way to approach it. Maybe there's other ways to approach it, you know, and addressing it that way.
There's a couple of things both of you said that really jumped out at me. If I was taking notes, like these are things I've been writing down, you know. So one, you said, respond, don't react. And when you said respond, you said part of responding is taking the time to collect all the information. I think that's really wise, right? Because it allows you to see the situation more clearly. The other thing I heard in what you said, when you respond, you give yourself time to respond in a good way, in a healthy way, right? And to me, you know, that's a big part of what we do in discipling students is we model godly behavior, right? So reacting probably doesn't really do that for us, right? Reacting probably just makes us look like a grown-up teenager rather than like a godly, you know, adult there. So some important things that I think you're saying that I'm just going to highlight. You also mentioned this too, which I think this is brilliant, is that sometimes the reason a student is difficult is because they have a leadership gift they don't know how to manage yet. Or you also mentioned sometimes the reason a student is difficult is because they haven't learned how to fit into the society that they're in. So there's so many variables here. So one more question about difficult students, and then we'll flip over to the other category of students that are hurting. How do you handle a difficult student that you have responded to correctly multiple times, maybe on multiple occasions, and you haven't seen the behavioral change yet that you want, and now you're getting to a point where you feel like their ongoing difficult behavior is beginning to affect the group as a whole?
One of the things I want to be able to communicate in our before that problem happens is creating that culture of everyone matters in this group. Everyone has significance in this group. We care for everyone in this group, and everyone has a place in this group. So if I'm communicating that everyone is individually and uniquely valuable in this group, then when there is an issue and there's a student that's having a negative effect on the community that we're creating, and these are some last resort sorts of things, the first thing I want to do is help them to understand how it's disrupting what it is that we're trying to create in this group, how it is contrary to what it is that we're trying to develop, and how it hinders all of the things that we want to see out of a community like this that's together, and so helping them, and they may catch it, they may not, but at the very least that's the first place I would start, is helping them understand how it's disrupting the community that we're trying to create, and helping them see what adjustments that they need to make so they can fit into it, but having some difficult conversations with a student about there may be another community that's a better fit for you. I know we don't ever want to think, oh, this could be the last time they ever hear the gospel. They'll never find it anywhere else. Well, first of all, that's not really. I don't think that's how the Holy Spirit works. And my hope is that as you've gotten to this point, it's you. There's been so much of a journey along the way that they understand. We've tried what we can here.
And biblically, we are called to be shepherds, which does tell us that we're supposed to protect. You know, and so sometimes there is the need, maybe at times in extreme situations, to use that as a form of protection by saying, hey, if behavior doesn't change, then we're not gonna be able to have you be apart any further.
And hopefully that would be like the 1%. Right? The 99% would be somehow you're pacing with them, or you're teaching others to be patient with other difficult people. How you talk about teenagers around teenagers is really important. So if you're using language like, oh yeah, they're so difficult, and so what do you think the other students are going to pick up on?
That's
so you got to be very careful about that, and teaching other ones that, give mercy, give grace, helping them. Sometimes people are just difficult because they don't feel like they fit in.
Yeah. And I've seen adults that have made situations worse because they were talking behind the back of other teenagers that were difficult.
Exactly.
And they're modeling, again, the wrong kind of cultural behavior or
Exactly.
biblical behavior that we want. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so let's talk about students now that are hurting. What are some signs that you two would coach us along? What are some signs we could see or be looking for that would help us understand this is a student that's hurting, thus the reason why some of the behavior is happening?
Yeah. One of the things I was always really aware of and wanted to be careful about is I'm not a professional counselor. I'm not a medical professional. And when it comes to hurting students, I have a role as an accountable adult, as a discipling adult, as a mature Christian. I have a role, but recognizing my role may be to help point them to someone who has the medical background or the counseling background to help them with deeper issues. So I saw my role as the triage nurse. Like I'm the first line of assessing what the situation is. And in a lot of ways, you think of like kind of the battlefield, so to speak. Working with teenagers is often like a battlefield.
It can feel like
when there's someone who's fallen or hurt on the battlefield. My job is to help figure out what's wrong, figure out where the bleeding is coming from, for lack of a better term. So I'm there to reassure, I'm there to comfort, and simultaneously I want to be asking questions and trying to figure out what the source of the hurting is, what the source of the bleeding is. But I don't want to pretend that I'm a counselor. I don't want to pretend that I'm a medical professional. But I want to see how I can partner with those people to be able to bring wholeness and completeness to these students.
Yeah.
So knowing who I am helps me identify what my role is in serving and pacing with students.
So as you're triaging, like some of the signs that you might be seeing in your students are things like all of a sudden they're like really harsh towards you.
Yeah.
Like that could be a sign. You're just simply asking them, hey, can you sit down right there? Like, why are you the boss of me? I don't understand why you're bossing me around. Blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh, all I did was ask you to.
That was so realistic. You've obviously had that happen.
Every day.
Another one is the people that they were close to, they're distant from now.
All of a sudden, they're like cut off.
There's just a quick change. Like you're not hanging out with the same people any longer. That's an identifier. There might be a hurt there. Or things that they used to find joy in, they don't find joy in those things any longer. They've quit the team, or they've stopped doing this, or they usually.
Okay, so we identify then this student is hurting. How what are some tips on how to respond to that, right? Because obviously we want to be there to love them, care for them, right, as much as we can. But and part of that will be maybe what you're saying, give them a recommendation to a professional, right? Yeah. But what's our role? How do we respond?
Sure.
Well, everything points to the gospel, right, when it comes to hurt. And so in terms of like who Jesus is, and in these conversations, you're kind of like starting the conversation to find out where they're at, as you said, what is the bleeding itself. And so that can take time. So that takes building relationship. In terms of also just seeing their physical exterior. Observational skills are very important in youth ministry. Are they kind of humped over? Are they, with a lot of cutters, they like to cover themselves. They won't show any of their physical body parts whatsoever, or even like, cases of kids who have been abused. All of a sudden the way you come near them and they like, they like shy towards, away from you. Or, and then you have your hidden ones who you never even could guess that they were. And so all of a sudden you just start seeing little things in their conversations or their posts, their social media posts that indicate there's something not quite right about it. And I think social media, like, don't discount it in terms of recognizing if it's a student's hurt. Because it will come there. Yeah. That's how they vent themselves.
Talk about that for a second. What's the right or wrong way to respond to a student's behavior on social media?
The whole respond versus react. I identify that what they're putting out there is probably a symptom of another issue. So just being aware that, and then helping them also be aware that, hey, just remember other people see this, other people, and so they either want that, and so we find out why it is that they want people to know this is happening, or help them understand there's maybe healthier ways to process what they're going through.
Don't correct. like I'm gonna say
online.
Online,
Yeah.
exactly. Like what I see is like relatives. You'll see this
Yeah.
post, and you'll see all their aunts, uncles, grandparents, the church person over there, and they're like, no, you can't talk like that. No, you can't say that.
Take this down right
yeah,
now.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's not our role. Like our role is to identify what happened, and then outside of that to address it. So the moment you want to address it online, stop yourself.
Yeah.
Just stop yourself.
Now, I heard both of you in response to the question about like how we respond to students. You both said some things that I think are some principles we can extract that we can then apply in a lot of different situations. One of the things I heard you say is that our response is based on the gospel. So as a leader, the way we respond to these situations, we represent the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important for us to remember. We represent the church, and that as we respond, a student is maybe potentially assessing whether they will ever be a part of your church or any church moving forward. Right? You also both said that we're not counselors. You said that very clearly up front, and so I think that's important, right, for us to recognize. That's a principle there. I'm not a counselor, so I don't have to bear the weight
No, you do
of
not.
being a therapist.
No.
But I do have a role to play in
Right.
helping maybe them get the help.
A healthy
You want to
adult.
add to that?
Yeah, and I think this is where the gospel connects to it, is the best thing we can do in helping a hurting student is for them to know I'm not alone.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not alone. The scariest part when you're hurting is isolation or thinking I'm all by myself. And the gospel certainly tells us that God is always with us, but me as the adult leader in discipleship, I'm with you as well, and we're going to figure this out together. You're
Yes.
not alone.
And practically speaking, that sounds like when a student tells you something,
Yes.
that maybe one of your first responses is something like, I'm so glad you told me that.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of you for telling me
Yeah,
that, right?
absolutely.
So principles here, you are the church, you're not a counselor, but then you mentioned this too, that sometimes it just takes time. And you got to pace with them, and you got to roll with them. So what the principle there, as I see it, is that I am a guide, right? A guide in the sense that I'm in this with you, right? I'm not going anywhere, which is what you're also saying too. The gospel, humanizes, or I don't know what I'm trying to say right now.
You're definitely on the journey with them.
Yeah, we're on the journey with you. We're together in this, right? Right? Right. It's humanized. That's the word I was trying to say, right? Like the gospel humanizes us and comes to life through us.
Yes.
Right? Because we're on the journey with them. So, just kind of some last thoughts there that principle-wise can help us when we're dealing with difficult kids and we're dealing with hurting kids. This has been so helpful. I wish the two of you had coached me when I first started in youth ministry. I would have handled a lot of situations a lot better. You all get to be the beneficiaries of that as you're launching youth ministry, as you're helping change the lives of students through the relationships that you're going to spend with them. So great session, guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.